sipping hermeneuticals. Well, get out.
It's your boy.
Jeffrey.
What up, you guys?
Well.
Thank you first of all, and
For being our
very first,
potentially of many,
one-on-one lockdown family members to be interviewed on this channel. Number one, well, I like to start off saying that welcome to the one-on-one mega lockdown interview with Mr. Ed CROWE.
Right.
And go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be with you. I'll call you Jeffrey. Is that what you really like? What you do? No?
Hey, I'm a dreamer. You know how this goes. You can call me Jeffrey, Mega Dreamer. Hey, as long as you call me. I told you, the same way y'all see me on YouTube is the same way y'all gonna get me here. I'm like this through life. I enjoy life.
Well, I appreciate it. And you know what it is? I want to call you what your friends call you because I consider you my friend.
Well, you want to Antoine. That's all my friends call me. They call me by my middle name.
Okay. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, Mr. Ed, I don't like calling you Mr. Ed.
What should we call him? What you want us to call you?
Ed.
Ed. Okay.
Ed. Today, well, you have sent me pictures. You had sent me pictures of your past and when that happened to you in '83. Now, from what I read, it was on the 8th of '83 when the incident happened. Am I right?
Yeah, it was in March of '83.
Yes, sir. Can you?
Elaborate.
Yeah, could you elaborate what you was doing on that particular day?
Well, I was. Let me just kind of start you out with. In March of '83, I was welding. I was a pipe welder. Had been welding probably for about a year, and I really loved welding. I was a fabricator, and a guy named Larry George had talked to me about 2 months before that. And on December 22nd in 1982, I got saved, and I was in the oil field. My life changed. I mean, it really changed. And so I had everything to look forward to. I mean, for the first time in my life, I was making good money. You know, I had 2 kids, was going to church. My wife was going to church. I mean, things were looking good. So I was on a project that we were rebuilding a steam generator. And what it did was it pumps steam in the ground and loosens the heavy oil that we have in Bakersfield, and then they can pump it out. So I was underneath this generator, and they fire them with natural gas. So there was a 2-inch line that came up, and it had a little 90-degree and a valve on it, and that was all disconnected because we were doing the whole rebuild on it. So toward the end, we were putting everything back together, and I was underneath this. Imagine like crawling underneath a table, a small table. And it was difficult for me to get in there. But once I got in there, it was about a 2 foot off the ground square, maybe by about 3 or 4 feet. So I was wadded up in there. And I was just cutting this piece of metal off. It was close to the end of the day. And I'd done some work, and I cut a sharp edge off because I knew the next day I was going to get in there and I was going to weld this whole thing up. I got it all tacked up. Well, this valve that was on this line had to be replaced, and we had been working on this unit for about 2 or 3 months. And at the beginning, they came out and they opened that 2-inch valve and said the gas has been shut off, and it was shut off like a mile down the line. So they didn't take us down there. They just said he opened the valve and said, and they put what they call a blind in. They break the line apart and they put a steel plate in there and then bolt it up. So everybody felt comfortable, and we did the full rebuild on it, and we were just putting it all back together. And as a matter of fact, I was the only welder on the job who did the whole thing. That's by myself, another crew, had about 3 or 4 guys. So unbeknownst to us, they shut that gas line off to another piece of equipment that they didn't realize it was so far away that it went, and one of the operators noticed he didn't have gas and his unit went down. So he went out and they pulled this blind out and put it back in service and didn't tell anybody.
Wow.
So,
hold on. So you telling me that it was a miscommunication on one end, and then wow.
And where I go with these on the safety things is, you got to remember that was close to 40 years ago.
Yes.
And
yes.
Safety is off the chain now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's what they call a lockout tagout procedure where they were supposed to take us. We would have locked it out, put a lock on it so nobody could have undone it. But back then everything was very lax, and they didn't do it. And that's, I like to, well, I don't like to think about it, but I'm sure that since things like this happened to me, that this is where all these procedures came from to protect workers.
Yes, sir. Especially. I know they we do go through that. When I was at I used to work at Lowe's and different stuff, and the procedures for safety is very high now. Very high now. I mean, you can't do one thing without it's a paper trail, locks, everything being put in position to stop whatever happens to people now.
Well, it's the same way when we worked for Fruit Loom.
Oh yeah.
Both of us used to work for Fruit Loom, so you know how big Fruit Loom company is. So OSHA was real strict at that particular time when we worked. So that was in the 90s.
Yeah, 90.
Right at 2000.
99, 98.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But you can continue.
You continue.
Well, anyway, so they turned the line back on, but they didn't tell us. Now the valve was shut. It was a ball valve, 2-inch ball valve.
I know exactly what that is.
You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so I was underneath this unit at 3:15 in the afternoon. Now we were just getting ready to pull out and roll up and go home. And the foreman on the crew thought, well, I got to change this valve out. So I think I'll just do it before the end of the day. He was going to take a pipe wrench, screw it off. Well, he didn't open the valve to check to see if there was anything in it. If he would have done that, he would have heard the pressure coming out. But everybody thought it was dead. So he started to unscrew this valve off, and I was underneath the unit 2 feet in front of this valve, underneath the ground or underneath that piece of equipment. And he unscrewed that valve off, and 40 pounds of natural gas came out of that 2-inch valve.
Did you just say 40 pounds?
40 pounds of pressure, 40 PSI.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. In the pressures that we deal with, 40 pounds isn't a lot because we deal with hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of steam and pressure. But just to kind of give you an idea, if you took a 2-inch valve and just air with 40 pounds coming out, it'd probably knock you down.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pressure.
So immediately I remember I was cutting with a torch, had my back, it came over my shoulder. And I remember hearing the woof, just like lighting a torch up real high, and light woof. And this is where it really gets amazing. I never lost consciousness or anything, but the only way out was toward the flame. And you don't normally instinctively want to go against where the heat's coming from,
yes,
especially with that much pressure blowing. And I remember there was probably about a 3 or 4 second period of time that I'd have no recollection of. But all I can tell you is the next thing I know, I was standing up watching it burn outside. And people say, how in the world did you get out? Because, it was on a 6-inch I-beam pedestal that this unit, this one piece of the whole thing set on. And to bump my head against it or to grab my shirt or something like that on the way out, and I'd have been gone. Any hesitation at all. Right. And the only thing I can tell you, and I firmly believe this, that Jesus or one of his angels just reached in there and pulled me out. And as I watched this flame go 60 to 80 feet in the air with no valve to shut it off. And my truck was parked there, so my helper, he pulled my hoses in from my torch, and it burnt the hose off, the torch off of the hose, and it was, blowing, and they shut the gas. And I said, move my truck so it, doesn't burn up. So he did. And there was another unit generator right next to it. And they were doing the refractory. That's the like a concrete material that they insulate the inside of it with.
Right.
And they come over. And so remember, this was in March. So here in Bakersfield, it's kind of the damp, rainy season when we get rain. And, I'm guessing it was probably in the 40 to 50 degree range at that time of the year. And so I remember looking at my sleeve, and it had burnt a hole, and it was smoldering. And so I saw a mud puddle or a puddle, and the old thing, stop, drop, and roll. So I hit that, rolled around a couple of times, and everybody said, "You're not on fire." And so this flame is continually burning, and the noise is loud, which is adding to the craziness. And I remember the guy said, one of the guys came up and said, told the foreman, "You need to get this guy to the hospital." And I go, what's going on? What's the big deal? And it felt like somebody slapped me in the face, and the sting was gone, and it was just numb. And so I walked over to one of the trucks, and I looked in the side mirror and said, "What's everybody looking at?" Because they come up and look at me and turn around and walk right away. And I looked in that mirror, and it looked like somebody had spread snot all over my face, and it was just hanging. And I thought, oh man, I did it this time.
Mr. Ed.
Yes.
At that particular time, with you just, you had just joined the church and was, just getting you and your family was, just not building your faith, but getting into that spiritual realm.
Building a relationship.
Yeah, building a relationship. What was your thoughts? What was your first initial thoughts?
Well, things are happening so fast at that particular time. But see, I really loved being saved. I mean, there's people that get saved, but then there's people that get saved, I was teaching Sunday school less than a year after I got saved. It was just my passion. And I drove a Sunday school bus for over 20 years. And and I didn't think much about that. I remember we were working fairly close to town. It was about a 20-minute drive to the hospital. And the foreman said, "Get in the truck, I'm going to take you." And so the road that led out to the main road was a little windy. It was paved. And I felt so bad for Irwin. Irwin's the one that took the valve off. But I just remember feeling so bad for Irwin, because I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've almost killed somebody. That it's got to be,
It's mind-boggling.
It is. And so, I didn't blame Irwin, and I wasn't mad. God gave me a peace about the whole thing. I was very calm. I wasn't running around like crazy. I was directing people, actually, I had to move my truck, do this. And so when I saw that, I said, yeah, I got to get to the hospital. So Irwin, I got in a truck, and we're heading down the road. And I remember I pulled the visor down on the passenger side, and it had a mirror, behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked in that mirror, and it looked like I had one of those Halloween, real fake-looking plastic wigs on.
Right.
And so I just took my hands and I went like this, and it filled the cab of that truck with burnt hair ashes. What burnt hair smell? It filled it. And Irwin rolled his window down, and he had his head out, man. He said, "Please don't do that." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was going to do that."
Right.
And he's doing like 90 down this road. And I said, "Irwin, if we die on the way to the hospital, there won't be no." But anyway, we got there, and I remember, if you go to a county hospital, and I told them, take me to Kern Medical, that's the county, because they had the best triage, as far as probably the closest place to. But I walked in, got out of the truck, I walked in, and if you've been in a county hospital, there's a million people in there. And he runs in there, and he's yelling at this lady, "I got a man here that needs emergency medical treatment now," and the lady's filling paperwork out like I've never heard that before, right?
Yeah.
He turns, I'll never forget it. She's writing, And she looked up and looked me in the face and just went right through that door. Right through that door. And she was pointing to the two stainless steel doors, you know, that open up to the back.
Right.
And boy, she got on the phone or whatever she got on. And when I walked through that door, there was 4 of them standing there waiting for me.
Oh, yes. Because we seen the pictures that you had sent, all 4. Now, Ed, between the pictures, it says 314 to 328 is when they was taking the actual pictures of each, like it was like each day or each week for the last 3 weeks that you was in there.
In stages.
I've got a lot more pictures. The hospital, what would happen is, well, let me tell you this. When I went back there, they said, how much do you weigh? Asked me some kind of unusual questions.
You're like, I don't know right now.
Yeah. Well, at that time, I was about 220. You know, I'm about 260 now. So, you know. So anyhow, and I'm about 6 foot tall. And the reason is dehydration is the #1 thing.
Right.
They got my clothes off and they evaluated. I heard the nurse telling the doctor it's 37% 3rd degree. And so they do some calculations and they said 2 IVs wide open. So they got the IVs going and I was in no pain. I didn't hurt at all.
Now that's remarkable because normally when you have 37% of your body burnt, you can feel that.
Well,
look, I know when I get a burn from cooking, it stings. Oh my goodness.
So, let me explain what happens. Your body goes into shock.
Oh, yeah.
And so they laid me down. They got my clothes off. They got the IVs going. Now you're at peace now. In other words, there's not a lot of going on. So now that adrenaline's wearing off and you're coming down. And I told the nurse, this is starting to hurt. Can I get something? And she said, you betcha. So she gave me 5 grain of morphine.
Ooh.
And felt it. And about 10, 15 minutes later, I said, I know you gave me something, but it's still hurting pretty good. And she said, I'm going to give you another 5. So she did. And then I felt, well, what happens is you hurt, but you don't care. It's kind of strange and it dries your mouth out.
I've had it. When I would cut from here to here, I had to have morphine. And I promise you, it burns a little bit when it first goes in you. But after that, you in the world, but you don't care what's going on.
Yeah, you know exactly. So they came in and told me that they couldn't take care of me there. They were going to take me to Sherman Oaks Burn Center, which is in San Fernando Valley. It's about 120 miles away. But they thought, well, we believe you'll make it okay in an ambulance. We don't have to fly you. So they got the ambulance. They loaded me up in the ambulance. You got to remember, that's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon now. So we're going to head down I-5 at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's right in the heart of
Time out. I'm an ex-truck driver. There ain't no way you telling me y'all went through I-5, 5 o'clock. It's been traffic jam like crazy.
Well, not only was it I-5, but when you get down in San Fernando, you get off the I-5 onto the 405 there at Sherman Oaks, which is, they say, the busiest in that section in the world.
Yes, sir. Still is today.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember I was in the ambulance. I wear glasses. My glasses had come off. I had them for a while. They found them afterwards. They were all burnt up. They got burnt the lenses out of them and everything. But on the way down there, I was looking out the back window, and I'm nearsighted, so I can't see distance very well. And they pulled off the side of the highway, right on the Grapevine. I don't know if you know where the Grapevine. They pulled right off the highway. And I remember the two, there was a lady and a guy. I think the lady was driving and the other guy was there. And they were arguing about where they were going. You know, they didn't have cell phones and GPS and all that.
Not back then.
They got lost on the way to the hospital. And I'm sitting on the side of the highway, the freeway on I-5, as all the trucks and everything's going by, and the ambulance did this, you know, and I'm going, man, I'm not even going to need to get to the hospital. We're going to die right here on the freeway, man. We're going to run over by a truck. But they found it, and, you know, it wasn't too far. And at that time, it took about 2 hours, I guess, to get there, hour and a half, 2 hours. My eyes had swelled shut. I couldn't take my fingers and open them. Wow. And I remember I was nauseated, I was hurting bad, and they rolled up and into the emergency area. The doors flew open, and man, they pulled it out. And I remember this one lady said, "Honey, don't worry, we're going to take good care of you." And that was the burn center down there in Sherman Oaks, world famous place.